Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is.
Good.
What's good. What's up, dude?
How's it going?
It's going good.
We
It's
uh
going
we
good.
had a well-known guest on today who I always enjoy talking to. I He was a source of inspiration and knowledge when I first started my business, and somebody that I can always turn to with questions or use as a resource, just based on how much content he's put out over the years. But we had Mike Guertin on today, second time guest. It's been too
Oh, I thought
long.
you were gonna send. I really thought you were gonna say Tim the Toolman Taylor.
Now,
That's where my mind went.
I mean, the real life Tim the man, Toolman Taylor, Mike Guertin.
Hmm. There we go.
Um,
We haven't had Mike on in
it's been a
years.
long time. He was. I remember interviewing him at a trade show.
Yeah, I think it was JLC.
Yeah,
And it was one of the most listened to podcasts. And I remember he was fired up about
yeah,
something.
he got real heat. I think it was like maybe education of trades. I forget. I was gonna
I
listen
think,
to it, but
yeah.
then I didn't want to. I didn't see that much value in it because I was like, I don't want to go back into that with him. I want to talk about other stuff.
No, let's talk about today.
Yeah.
What's he up to today? Is he on TikTok? How old is he?
Yeah, none of which we got answered.
He answered.
But he did call me out politely about mine and Jordan's conversation that we had about him. It was all in love, and Mike knows it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was good. He's always super humble. I love what he does. I love his teaching style. I don't know, dude. I hate doing roofing and siding, and I watch him do this stuff or read his articles, and I'm like, man, he makes it look enjoyable. And then as soon as I start
That's the
doing it
thing,
again,
'cause
I'm like, oh, I hate this.
like, when people are good at something and you watch them do it, it's like, dude, you saw that stonemason, the young kid that's, like, chipping
Yeah,
stone? Like, that's mesmerizing to watch. If I ever picked up a chisel and started trying to do that, I'd be like, "Nope,
yeah.
not fun."
Yeah, but
But he's good at it.
yeah, I mean, all his flashings and his detail. Even if you go on his Instagram page and just watch, it's very like the production value on it is low, but the actual value of what you're watching, there's so much information packed in there. He just like explains what he's doing. It's so simple, but it's so easy to digest and like understandable that if you aren't following him on social, you're missing out. And if you're not reading his articles and you're not going to see him at trade shows for live events, he is a treasure within the industry, and you should really go check him out and see what he's doing. So thanks, Mike.
This podcast is brought to you by Andersen. When making decisions on the product you spec, we're always thinking about what's right for the customer and what the specific project's needs are. We're also thinking about our reputation, and Andersen knows that the product they manufacture are part of the legacy that we're all trying to build.
From Fibrex composite material that delivers performance and looks at a budget-friendly price point to the Easy Connect reinforced joining system that makes it easier to assemble oversized window walls with less people, to Andersen's best performing A-series product line with the most energy efficient windows and doors Andersen has ever offered. Whatever your building needs are, they've got you covered. Andersen knows it's about fewer callbacks and products that will perform over time. That's why they test their products beyond the threshold required by the industry.
Andersen appreciates that. While it may be their products going into our projects, it's ultimately our brands that we're building. And they're proud to be helping us craft our legacies. Learn more about their product offering at andersenwindows.com. Podcast is also brought to you by Buildertrend. When I first started my construction company, I relied on paper and pens, sometimes pencils, to keep track of important notes, and I always struggled to keep up with the loads of ever-changing information, but I quickly realized I couldn't scale my business that way. That's why I ultimately decided to invest in technology. Buildertrend's project management software makes it possible to win more jobs, impress more clients, and get more word-of-mouth referrals.
Thanks to features like CRM, schedule, estimate, customer portal, home builders like myself are able to beat out other guys and grow their businesses. If you want to learn how to stand out from your competition with Buildertrend, schedule a free demo of the platform by going to buildertrend.com/MC demo.
How are you?
Pretty well. How about yourself?
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
How many days of the month does that happen?
31.
Really?
No, of course not. Even when it's not a 10 out of 10, I'm going to tell you it's a 10 out of 10.
Oh,
Because that's, you know what? You got to, if you want it, you got to manifest it.
I've been listening. You ever heard of a podcast called The Hidden Brain?
Mm-mm.
They run it on some NPR stations, but this guy kind of dives into the way your brain and your mind work, and it's pretty cool the way he interviews psychologists, psychiatrists, brain researchers, and it was this thing about basically you can make yourself like either awestruck or happy or whatever, and there are
Yeah.
like they figured out ways that you can to do that, just simple things you can do during a day instead of taking this path. You just make
Dude,
your mind and your body go that way, and it's like it works.
I believe it. A couple episodes ago, we were talking about this where I follow an app for my workout in the morning, and at the end of the app, or at the end of the day, at the end of the workout, it says, "How are you feeling?" Like a big ass smiley face, and then it's got like a sad face on the other end. And almost every day, I just put like not the huge smiley face, but the second smiley face. And a couple weeks ago, I was exhausted. My kid kept me up all night, and I was in the gym, and I go to like click that thing, and I just hit the regular happy face, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm doing big smiley face today, and I like totally wasn't, but like I remember hitting it and be like, yeah, my day's excellent,
Yeah,
and I agree, like
it
I'll
just
listen to that
makes you
podcast, but you
gives you
got to
that
you got
positive
to believe
attitude.
it, and
Yeah,
it's you know
you're
we
in
talk
control
we
is what
talk
it
about
comes
this a
down to.
lot. It's like it's like a bad client. Like
Mhm.
bad client makes you completely like blind to all the opportunity that you have with potential great clients, and all your energy goes into like making this one bad client happy. And it's like the reality is like, what am I doing this for? It's like, let me just like I gotta focus on the people that want to work with me, that are happy. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's cool. You said it's called the what, Hidden Brain?
Oh, hidden brain. Yep.
All right, I'm
I
gonna look
think
it
it's
up.
hiddenbrain.org is their site. There's
Hidden.
so many good podcasts out there. I don't have time
Oh
to,
my god, I don't even,
to
I
catch them
know.
all.
Oh yeah, Hidden Brain, NPR.
I mean, not all the programs are, like spot on for everybody, but there are a
No,
few,
dude,
and they
Tyler,
got good titles.
336,000 reviews on that
Really?
podcast. 4.8 star
NPR's
rating.
NPR's big. How's it going, Mike?
Good, Tyler. Hey, I really enjoyed the one-on-one you had with Jordan
Oh, you
Smith.
listened.
Oh, of course. I can't say I listen to all the podcasts, but I try to catch up with as many as I can. I listen to them on like 1.25 speed,
Yeah,
which is your voice sounds exactly the same, but everybody talks just a little bit quicker, so I can pack more in during the
that's what you
day.
gotta do. We
Yeah.
had fun. We were cracking up at your expense. I
Yeah,
mean,
I know.
lovingly,
It was
lovingly.
okay. That was okay. I particularly enjoyed the part where you were commenting on, like old boomers should not be on social media until they get a training
I
course.
know. I feel like my mom's husband has been kicked off Facebook like 3 or 4 times already for just posting shit that, like, you shouldn't be posting on Facebook, and I'm like, "You're just not gonna learn, are you?"
Dude, my dad posts stuff and he's like, I didn't post that on Facebook. I'm like, you did. I'm looking at it. He's like, no, I put it on Instagram. I'm like, well, your Instagram is connected to your
Yeah.
Facebook. And
Oh,
not
kind
only
of.
that, it's like your personal Instagram page is tied to your
Yeah,
business profile on Facebook. So you're posting these like wild
Yeah.
political
Ooh,
views, and it's going
careful.
directly to your business Facebook page. I'm
Gotta
like,
be
Dad,
careful.
I'm like, come on,
Gotta
man.
be careful.
And he listens to this podcast, and he's gonna text me. He's like, I don't do
not
that.
me.
I'm like, You do.
Well,
You
you know,
definitely do.
the other thing is older people don't have filters. You get to a point where it's just
Nah.
like, what the heck?
I wonder, like, will we have no filter
I
at that
I
age?
Yeah,
already
you
lack
won't.
somewhat of a filter. This is like my
You
best
think?
version of me on here.
Do you think our kids' generation are gonna like? I feel like we're like as a society, we're being filtered more. Like, do you think our kids stand a chance of being unfiltered?
Oh,
I think a
yeah.
lot of them are, aren't
You
I
they?
feel like
think?
it's getting worse.
Yeah,
There's, like,
maybe.
no accountability for anyone or what they say or what they do, so I feel like there's less of a filter now, but I
Mm,
think I think that, like, the older generation is just like, "I filtered myself for long enough that, like, what's the point now? Like, what's
Mhm.
gonna happen?"
yeah.
So it's different. I think the younger generation, like, doesn't know any better to even like, they don't even understand what a filter is. They just feel as though they can say what they want and there's 0 accountability for it, and, that's it.
Well, it's also easier to say what you want, especially through like the behind a keyboard, right? Where it's
Yeah,
like, like none of these people would say something like that in
for sure.
person. They'd be shaking.
That happens a lot, especially if you're not thinking about the implications when you put it up there, that it's there for so long. It doesn't
Mm,
go away. It's not like a moment in time if you're having a personal conversation, you know, people don't know, it's in one ear out the other. But
yeah.
Are you
Well, it's like,
was Jordan correct saying that you're in Arizona now?
no, no, I live in Rhode Island, like I have since I was a little kid, and I bought a house in
Okay.
Arizona.
mm,
Um, it was, yeah, one of those pandemic whims. My wife and I said, "Yeah, let's buy a house instead of renting Airbnbs when we want to come out here to visit and do things." So yeah, there's a whole long story with all that. But yeah, I got a house, and of course, I bought a fixer upper, so now it's go away for 3 months or 4 months in the winter and working all the time. So
mm,
that's all
At
right.
at what point, like, I feel like sometimes I get tired of working and working on my own homes. You remind me a lot. My dad just like never gets tired of doing that. Do you think that you'd ever just like buy a house where it's like, yeah, this is good. I don't have to do a bunch of work on it. Like, don't you get tired of doing this stuff at some point?
Well, I can't speak for your father, but when I do, so the house I'm in, I built 27 years ago, and I said, this is going to be the last house my wife and I build. I'm going to do it right. But then technology changes, material changes,
yeah.
building science kind of caught up to like what was really happening. It's amazing how fast that stuff all changed. And now I'm looking, and then, it was white cedar, unfinished siding, and it's got a lifespan of about 30 to 40 years before you got to replace it. And now I'm kicking myself for not doing other things because I really don't want to go back and fix it up
Mm.
because I thought I did it right the first time. So we're just going to sell it and build my next forever home. Already clearing the lot for
what
that.
what was what was the WRB on the house that you live in now?
Tyvek.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's a good t like, that when you talk about, like, product changed, I think Tyvek was so relevant for so long. It was like Tyvek, Typar, and then maybe you'd see tar paper still.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it went from that to, I don't know which one to use,
Hmm.
where it's like every manufacturer makes one. You got self-adhered, you got liquid applied, you got stuff that's built onto sheathing. It's like with tape. It's that I feel like is this whole generational shift. Like when I'm 35, and I remember when I got into the trade, we didn't have anything but like it was always Tyvek.
Yep.
And then by the time I started my business is when the self-adhered started coming out, and then it was like no one. It was like, you use Tyvek? What are you crazy? And it went from black to white, like, overnight.
And when you think about it, that's just one example of thousands of the
Yeah.
building products we have available.
Mhm.
It is how does a builder or remodeler today like sift through what works best? It's like you can pick one and just
Yeah.
stick with it, but when you look at the performance criteria, one doesn't always fit every situation. So you got to be able to be product knowledgeable and then application knowledgeable.
I agree to an extent. I think that also the product data, especially from performance perspective, oftentimes gets manipulated. Where it's like, it's like when they were racing the Milwaukee to the Makita drills. It's like the Makita's point 1 second faster. Buy the Makita. It's like I don't give a shit if it's point 1 second faster.
A
Like that
lot of other
doesn't. But
features.
but that was the
That was
view,
their metric, yeah.
and I think it, I was talking about food and comparison to Europe, and we were talking about cereal specifically, and I grabbed a box of cereal, and it's like it's not healthy. It's filled with sugar, but on it says like heart healthy. It's like it finds one thing to play off, and it's like, oh, it's healthy. It's heart healthy. It's got a picture of a heart, and it says it's good for my heart. It's like that that's just marketing.
Yeah.
It's like you can tell I saw you could take a Reese's cup and say it's a protein bar because it's got protein in it, but it's like
Mhm.
it's just the marketing side. So I agree with you to an extent, but I think a lot of it comes down to marketing, and those metrics don't really matter. All they don't always matter. Like the difference, like no doubt, like there's better products out there, but when it comes down to it, I think the majority of the success will come to the application
So
or the
so then, Mike, how
installation.
are you balancing all the new products and methods with the tried and true? And I think that you have a lot of insight to that because I see you all the time working on projects that you touched 20, 30 years ago. So you have the track record that most people have to not only be getting through 20, 30 year life cycles of these materials, but also on your own work, which is probably there's not a lot of people out there that are going back to their projects from 20, 30 years ago and seeing what worked and what didn't.
So back up to the beginning part of the question, which
How are you
was,
balancing all of the new products, methods, materials with the tried and true?
boy, I every day I'm trying to figure it out. Um, some things I've gone back to tar paper on for certain situations, but then if I'm doing open gap siding, then I'm probably not going to use tar paper. I'm going to use something that's made for that purpose. So it's just evaluating what's going to be the best product for that situation. And a lot of times it's choices that clients make. So you don't really, what kind of countertops they want, what brand of cabinets, what do they like for that. So kind of out of the scope of what I would make the decision on, other than guiding them a little bit.
I mean, even like now, there was a huge the entire zip market and the sheathings with the WRBs essentially impregnated into them, and now even from when Zip made a push, what was it, 7 years ago, where it started rolling onto market, maybe a little bit longer, but like really felt like there was a push to now where everyone is integrating these complex range screens, and it's like, do you need to be using Zip? A more expensive product if you're using these expensive range screens on top of it. Why not just use a standard sheathing and then your
Mhm.
range screen rather than wasting money on these special products? And I still see people like I mean, I guess you have the benefit of Zip being waterproof or watertight as soon as you install it, and you don't have to worry about water getting into the building. But there's just so many things to consider at this point with how much everything's changing.
There's a lot to consider, but in in and a lot of times I think the decisions get made that aren't necessarily picking the best product for the situation. A lot of builders, at least the ones that I can't really speak that they're not thinking about it, but they've made the decision that everything they build is going to be, zip sheathing, or every house I build is going to have this house wrap on it, or
Hmm.
they kind of have their way they do it, and they may change over time. I know some builders that have been at it almost as long as me, and you see them, go from one thing to another. But every house that they're doing, they're using, and I think we're focusing here on WRB sort of stuff, but it could be a lot of other products, whether it's the roofing shingles at the brand that they happen to like, or the underlayments they use, or whether they put fully adhered peel and stick on the whole roof, or do just an ice barrier with some synthetic above that, and you see them change. And then they use that as their And I did the same thing years ago when I bought into Tyvek, which was, we're going to set ourselves apart from other builders back in the early 80s. We're going to use this new fangled white stuff that comes in 9-foot rolls. And the old school old timers were using tar paper. Little did we know that some of that tar paper has some pretty good performance characteristics. I might have been better off sticking with that.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I've been dealing with water issues on my current project, and I'm like going through all of these somewhat complex flashing circumstances for finishes that we're using, and the entire time I'm just thinking to myself like, are we making all of this just way harder than it needs to be able to use products that are out there today? Does it need to be this hard? Does it need to be this complex? And nobody like people didn't even have windows with window flanges attached to them however many years ago, and things stayed dry and they managed water. And why, I understand the houses are tighter now, but like why, it's almost as if we made things easier to install and dummy proof, and by doing that we've made it way more complicated than it has to be.
hmm,
I have trouble sometimes where I'm like, I don't know, like is by using these, like even tapes, right? Tapes are supposed to be making things so much easier. But then I'm like, I just spent $500 on tape and like rolling it out and waterproofing it. And I'm like, I could have bought a lot of metal and like had a break and made a lot of this and probably would have a longer lifespan than the tapes. I'm questioning a lot of what we do, as if, yeah, maybe anyone can install tape, but like, is it cheaper? Is it lasting as long? Is it the right move on a lot of this stuff?
I one builder, I think he's retired now, but I remember him being at a JLC Live show where it was that he was doing one of the conference sessions. This was back in the late 90s, and he's made the statement, every house is an experiment. Every
Hmm.
remodeling project is an experiment. We're not going to know for, pick your number, years, 20, 30, 40 years, whether it worked or not. So it's like, I think a lot of people, if smart ones anyway, are thinking, I'm going to put this tape in. I'm really, like you're saying, you're betting your life on it, not necessarily your life. You're betting
Hmm.
your reputation on it, and you're really not going to know for a number of years whether, doing all those details were overboard or were inadequate.
Yeah, I mean, I think about
It,
my house as well, right? My house is 150 years old and the exterior clapboard has never been pulled off of it. And it's like, are if we're only building an exterior, even like the whatever, I forget what his name was, but he was a masonry contractor builder that we had on maybe 6 or 8 weeks ago. And he's like, "This, what's the zip guarantee? 20 or 30 years?" And it's like, if we're building exteriors of homes to only last 20 to 30 years, I feel as though like that's not the right move. Like the house, my
I
outside
agree.
of my house is 150 years old and it's never had to be redone. And why, like
Mhm.
we're saying that we're building to this certain standard, but then the guarantee on the plywood that's sheathing our entire house is 20 or 30 years. Like that's a very short time span.
And that's the warranty that they're giving us. It may work out that it lasts longer. We're not going to know for a long time. And it's a lot. Isn't that the way it is for lots of products we work with? The manufacturer gives you, 10, 15, 20 years. And that's just on the product. It's not on necessarily the full installation, or if you made any mistakes in the installation.
Yeah, that's I mean that's a good point. I just, with what I'm running into now, the project has lasted like 10, 15 years, and at like the cost to renovate a home that's failing in that short amount of time, it's making me question how a lot of people are doing things. I mean, even watching from like an educational standpoint, watching what you do and how you articulate what you want to be doing, whether it's weather, making an area weather tight, waterproofing, flashing. you simplify it enough for people to understand, even if you're using metal or integrating WRBs to tape. And I feel like all the information is out there. Like single-handedly, you have enough information out there yourself to educate anybody who's in our industry if they want to properly install a window or a door or metal flashings. But like, why are we still having trouble getting this right?
Yeah.
I bump up against this so often with so many things that I do. It's like a friend of mine said we were doing trainings with at the IBS for a number of years, doing the same training, and some guy after like 5 years, it was window flashing, right? And some guy came up, he says, "You've been doing these same trainings for 5 years now. When are you going to change it up and show us something new?" And we said, "We have a full audience. We asked for a raise of hands at the beginning. How many have ever seen this before?" It was new to everybody. I think we could be doing the same standard flashing, window flashing training 15 years from now,
Mm.
and still it would be wrong. You think of, excuse me, it would still be new for people, whether they're young or older people like me who got stuck in that 1980s, X cutting the openings and wrapping all the wrap in the and then surface applying the flange window and just no caulking, just nailing it on and thinking everything was magic and we weren't going to have to worry about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I would I guess my question to you with that is like, why do you feel we have such trouble with this? I mean, I hired a sub once, and the windows were installed, and I had them just temporarily wrap the outside with Tyvek because we ran into some hiccups. I knew we weren't going to be closing it in, and I was like, I just want to weatherproof it right now. And they ended up taping the bottom flange of the window to the Tyvek. And I'm like, this is a siding contractor that all they do is siding work. And this is temporary, but I'm sure that that wasn't communicated to them. Um,
Yeah.
but like, if they were the siding contract and they taped that and put it up and I wasn't on the job that day, right, and that got covered, now there's an issue down the road that nobody's going to see, that water can't come out of that bottom flange. And I'm like, this is what this person does every single day. Like, why? I don't get why we can't get this right and why it's so
Hmm.
difficult, and like what needs to happen to be able to educate people as to how to build correctly, because it's all out there. Like, you can find, like I said, you have enough information yourself that if I look up any sort of window flashing article, more than likely you're going to come up on that. And why aren't people taking the time to do that?
I wonder where the motivation has to come from. Some people are self-motivated to learn more, to make sure that they're doing it right because they want to do the best they can, or they're afraid of the liability if they don't do it right. So there's that side of it, and other people are they don't realize they don't know what they don't know. They learned something one way one time and they figured that was the best way and they stick with that. Other people don't take avail themselves of the opportunity. Um, though not I've struggled with the notion that the only way to solve it is going to be regulation, because that just most people rail against that. But in figure in British Columbia, some of them and some of the maritime provinces in the eastern part of Canada, after they put the house wrap in and they flash the windows, they have an inspection. Out in British Columbia, they're required to, in addition to the building permit and having their regular building inspections, they hire a third party sort of weather envelope designer who sort of lays their plan over an architect's design, and they detail, maybe they have standard details for how a flashing pan is done for a window or a door for this particular house, how the rain screen is going to be done, which is a requirement there. They need a 10 millimeter space behind their cladding. And then that third party person who's designed it they come out and do an inspection after everything's done, after the house wrap, water resistor barrier, after all the windows are in, all the flashing's done. They do an inspection before the siding can go on. Um, I don't think that would fly here in the States,
Why
but
not?
it why
Like,
not? Because just the anti-regulation, I don't know, contingent amongst a lot of people.
so, I mean, I know our current project, there's gonna be stucco on the outside, so they wanna come do a lath inspection prior to
Mhm.
stucco where, like, why wouldn't they require that of an exterior before the final finish goes on? Like, if I guess they're thinking stucco essentially, right? It's such a bear to pull that off, and if it's done wrong, you can have such catastrophic failures. But like, what's the difference between that and putting up any other exterior finish? Maybe vinyl comes off easier, but like, why should you be saying like, well, the vinyl comes off easy enough that we can repair it if it fails? Why aren't we just being like, let's make sure it doesn't fail before the exterior finish goes
Mm.
up? Like that would make more
Now, is
sense to me.
is that lath inspection one that you have in New
Yeah.
Jersey?
I mean,
Yeah.
it depends on it actually depends on the township. That's not every township, but they're gonna wanna come
Ah.
out and ensure that the lath is, attached to the structure adequately, and then all of our flashings and our transitions from stucco to other material and weeping is
Mhm.
all done right. They wanna make sure that everything underneath the stucco is up to snuff prior to us covering that up, and, like, that makes like, just because it's stucco doesn't mean that I feel as though that should be the only time that that's required. Because what? Because stucco's harder to take off? Like, I just feel that you should be taking those consideration, those steps for any exterior finish that's going up.
Well, I'm glad to hear they're doing it for the stucco, and I agree with you. It is harder to take off, so maybe that's why they do it. Or it could be a real throwback to some problem that happened many years ago in that jurisdiction. And now they say, well, we're not going to let that happen again. So
Yeah.
now we're going to do an inspection, which is, what you see happen in many cases, where you get either a county or a town or a city who their inspectors are very sensitive to doing an inspection of certain aspects of the building. I know in my community, for instance, um, they we have to verify the water table at the highest level it's ever been in eternity, and we have to make sure our basement slabs are 2 feet above that because a whole bunch of homes were built in the 1970s that the basements were too low and they all flooded. And who does the homeowner call, 10 years later when those basements are flooding? They call the local building department to find out, why did you approve this?
Mm.
Things like that. So,
It's an interesting perspective too, where like like that being used as an example, that inspection was a product of a bunch of failures. So that inspection was put into place to basically prevent a failure,
mhm.
which means that you are doing just enough not for it to not fail. Where we talk about building code and how they're getting more strict and how it's difficult, sometimes it's difficult to meet building code. It's but and we say it all the time, but thinking about it in the mindset of why these were put into place in the beginning or in the first place, it's like they were put there because of some sort of failure that, hey, we need to put eyes on this so that we can prevent the failure. Where it's like we need to be really building, so like we should be building so well that we're not treading the possibility of failure.
Hmm. And I think you're right. It is all built in the code, and even circling back to the water resistant barrier, there it's very explicit in the code. It says that the water resistant barrier shall be installed free of breaks and gaps.
Hmm.
And then it goes on and it said if you're using a manufactured product like a Tyvek, a Typar, or zip sheathing or any of that stuff, you must follow the manufacturer's installation instructions. So therefore, the manufacturer's installation instructions are now an enforceable, can be enforced by the local code official. And
Mm.
then when you get into windows, there's a whole section just about that. It goes into a flashing pan that somehow prevents the water from going in towards the house. So it either has to be sloped or back dammed. Those are terms we would use. The code uses the code language, which kind of confuses most of people when they read it. It doesn't sink in, but there must have been, because there were failures at some point, and then the code put some language in there. But the I guess um, where things fall apart is the local building inspector isn't checking it. But I don't want to put the responsibility on them. I mean, gosh, in order for an inspector to check everything we do, they'd get their lawn chair out and relax and settle in for 5 months of watching what we do every
Yeah,
day.
that's true.
Because
But you look at, I mean, look at commercial where like they come out for inspections, like a high rise. They're coming out for quote unquote inspections, but it's more just, to show face, and then they're
Mhm,
looking for an affidavit.
yeah, but in commercial, they're aren't they usually relying on engineers and
That's
architects to
that's what I
do?
mean, is like the
Yeah, yeah,
affidavit is done by the structural engineer, like, so
right, right,
they're putting the responsibility on someone else.
yeah,
And then you get the whole, well, like, why isn't the inspector doing it? It's like, he's got 150,000 square feet to look at. He's not gonna catch
yeah,
everything. So
yeah.
we're paying, these consultants six figures to sometimes seven figures, right? To be engineering this, and they need to be doing construction admin, meaning they're coming out and looking to make sure what they've engineered and designed is being done appropriately.
Mike, what were you guys using when you would install flanged windows and tar paper was more common to transition between the flange and the tar paper? Like before tape, like what were they using to waterproof that transition?
It's pretty interesting. If the flange windows, I mean, gosh, the first windows I was putting in the 70s were the old 908 cased or flat, 5/4 cased
So
windows
like you would get a
with a
door
wood
with brick
sill.
molding on it now.
Right, right, right. And so flange windows, those were animals that came out, and they might have come out in the 60s or 70s, but we really didn't see those extensively until the early 80s, mid 80s, and we didn't know what to make of them. We thought they were, like I say, they were magic.
Yeah.
You just throw them up there and water doesn't go in, but it did.
So
Yeah,
essentially,
I
it was like
cringe.
back caulking those and then putting a drip cap on top on the excuse me
We
on before the flange windows when you had like the 5/4.
Yeah, with there was a process that the old timers had with the flange windows. We put on maybe like 6 to 8 inch wide, two strips on either side of the window, rough opening of some 30-pound tar paper. That way it would extend beyond the whatever that molding that
Yeah.
which was applied at the local shop with the for the exterior trim. Then we put the window in, no caulking to that. It just went in, and then you put a metal cap flashing. Usually that was copper or lead, or yeah, copper or lead, sometimes galvanized sheet metal. And you put a cap flashing over that, and then you just butt your siding to it. And for there was no flashing pan or anything, because you figure they had a wood sill which went beyond the horns or the shoulder of those
Yeah.
the casings that came down. So pretty much as long as it hit that's wood sill, and it had a good slope on it, maybe like a 15-20% slope, that water would pretty much always drain out.
Yeah, it's not gonna like come down off of the sail and then work its way back up to the house and then onto
Right.
that transition.
Yeah.
Um, I I
Of course they did leak, a little bit here and there.
I mean, new stuff that we're doing now is gonna leak here and there, regardless of what you do. It's just going to happen. Like I would be confident installing what we do today with tar paper, and even if you need a drainage plane, just like furring strips and aluminum flashings
Yep.
if need be. And I'm like, why are we using all of this crazy ass shit to do this that like is making it hard? You have to integrate like a range screen. I'm like, well, how am I tying this range screen into this and then this tape and then that comes over this and that tape has to go under this tape before you put, and I'm like, this is so confusing. Like I would
Mhm.
stand behind a product that I covered in tar paper, furring strips, and aluminum flashings and be like, this is good and going to last as long, if not longer, than what everyone else is using
But
today.
the problem is that it's not so much about the longevity, it's about the performance of the home.
Yeah, but like
Where
it's
that's driving it, where it's like, sure, you can get an airtight home a million different ways, but all these products with all these tapes and membranes and liquid this and liquid that, they're they're being brought to the market because it makes it quote unquote easier to achieve the performance results
yeah,
required.
but then how much of the environment are we polluting making tapes that are like
That's and I'm saying this, like sarcastically, but like that's not what we're worried
yeah,
about.
it's it,
We're worried about getting the a tighter home or a
I
performance
mean, how
rating
about
to
if you
meet
build a
code
home
or
that you don't need to tear the outside off of it in 20 years and then put all the same shit back on where it's like, "Oh, so it leaked some air, but we didn't have to replace the outside of it in 20 years."
yeah. It's funny that this conversation keeps coming up, especially in recent episodes where it's the and I think Tyler, you've asked that question a handful of times now. It's like, are we doing ourselves a disservice here? Are we focused on the wrong thing? Are we trying to build something that is just completely offsetting the good that we could be doing elsewhere? Where it's like this is the only focus is our performance characteristics of the home. It's like, well, how does that like you said, are we polluting the environment by using a particular product, or is Mike stripping cedar shingles off his house every 30 years because that product didn't last long
Yeah, so
enough?
Mike, how important is it to you to be building durable, long-lasting projects? And again, this comes back to seeing you working on a lot of your same projects 20, 30 years later. Like you have a real world gauge of effectiveness of the systems that you're using. So, how important is it for you to be spending the time to be building these durable projects?
So going forward, and thinking about what I do now, I'm hoping that by making good choices of materials and by taking a little extra time to install them, and I got to say I'm fortunate because I can take the time to do that. I'm not under pressure from necessarily a client who is time sensitive or budget sensitive, so that they're willing to spend the money to um, have us go and take the extra work. Because I'd say up front, this is the way I do it, and there is a reason why we do it and why it's going to take longer and cost more. And then so I'm hoping that something that I'm putting up together today, as long as the exterior, say siding itself, itself lasts, that everything underneath is going to last 50 plus years. And I'd like to say I could make it last 100, but I know that the window, well, we've got these windows nowadays where because there's multi-pane, we don't know if they're going to be able to, if a seal breaks, they're going to have a you know, they're going to need to be replaced. But luckily, we could hopefully take a sash out and replace the sash, and it doesn't involve the frame. So I'm hoping everything from the frame outwards for water resistance will go 50 to 100. Am I crazy thinking that it would last that long? I don't. I wonder.
I don't know. I feel like if you're only building to a 20-year standard for exterior, especially when you're considering you're putting finishes on and how invasive that renovation has to be to pull it off and the impact of a failure in that case, like I feel as though you should be building to say I want this to last my lifetime. Like I don't want to pull this apart again. I think that that's the
I
right
don't want to
move.
call back when I'm
Yeah,
90.
exactly. Too old at that point. What so that being said, what for exterior finishes that like are not real wood, wood products, cedar, shakes, what's your favorite exterior finish to work with, like siding material of today's materials, if it's not like a true authentic wood material?
am I limited to I have to pick something synthetic?
I mean, I would like to know just because I feel as though we're moving in that direction. I mean, you could tell us your favorite and then your favorite
Hmm.
synthetic as well.
I I don't necessarily have a favorite synthetic. In fact, I like to avoid them as much as possible.
Mm,
I'm a fan of wood, um, and if even though I know, like in the case of my house, where the white cedar shingles are going to, eventually give up, at least on some facets faces of the house because it's getting beat on by the sun on the south side, and that'll need to be replaced. But we've had to replace siding for hundreds of years. I mean, you can say the clapboard on an old house, if it was the old vertical grain, old growth cedar, you might get 150 years out of it if it keeps a good coat of lead paint on it. It'll go for maybe a little longer, but even today's faster growing wood, I think I, I I'm a fan of just local cut pine, and as long as you got a good overhang on your sides of the house and you keep it somewhat protected or as protected as you can from the weather, we can get 30, 40 years out of that native cut wood. So that's what I'm going to be using on my next house, as long as my wife goes with that.
it if you had no limitations in terms of budget, would you look towards something that doesn't need to be replaced? And I think, like, stone, granite, like,
Oh,
I think about, like, if we're avoiding synthetic materials, right? And you talk about we've always had to replace siding, but if you think about some of the older, bigger buildings, were probably for the more wealthy, these homes will stand, you know, 500 years, 600, 700 years, and be exactly the way they were because they're made with a material that doesn't wear out.
and those buildings were built out of if it was, stone or any type of masonry, that was the structural part of the building. It was the
Mhm,
structure and it was the cladding.
mhm,
Where what we see, if we look at what we do most of the time now, where we build wood frame homes or
mhm,
some alternative process, and then we put a cladding, which is brick or stone on it, a natural material or a traditional manufactured material like brick,
mhm,
then they do last longer, but they're not as if they were the structural part where you stacked up rocks. I mean, we're getting back to cave person days.
hmm.
Um,
Well, even I mean, I'm thinking about, like, these commercial buildings that are all limestone
oh,
and
hmm,
granite, that are carved and stacked and mortared
yeah.
together. I mean, brick brick certainly wears away. It's softer by nature, and I feel like the limestone and the granite buildings, they require maintenance
Yep,
in terms of, pointing, but
yep.
beyond that, it, they stand a very long time.
Oh, absolutely. I've been to Italy and I'm going back there next year, hopefully. And
Those are the most
boy,
impressive buildings. It's
you look at those places and you look at the old copper or lead flashing, and some of those are original, hundreds of years old. And
Yeah.
yeah, but
I
I
mean, you
Nick,
look
wonder
at
that's
what
who
the
we had
cost
on.
to
So
build like that today would
if
be.
you just heard that, I was pulling up the interview that we had. Austin Tunnel,
yeah.
from Building Culture, who's building essentially like double and triple wide brick homes, that it's
Hmm.
structural masonry homes. And you
Mhm.
look at the longevity and the durability of those homes, and it's somewhat unmatched.
But I don't wonder what the cost would be.
Definitely more.
So many things are cost
Yeah.
driven. Most homeowner clients, they're not thinking that they're building a home to last 300
Mm.
years. They're thinking it's going to last the period of time they're going to live there, and that will the market will appreciate, so they can, either get out without losing any money if
Yeah.
everything works out, or they're going to actually appreciate in value.
It we I was talking about this with my wife the other day, and because we were in Italy and we were talking about these masonry buildings, and I had said to her, I was like, "I'd love to just build a full masonry building." like, either whether it's CMU with brick or like just a masonry building and get rid of the wood. And then we went down the rabbit hole, and I was like, it'd actually really be cool to just do it all out of concrete, floors, walls, ceilings. Um, and she's like, well, how much more is it? I'm like, to be honest, I have no idea. I've never priced out, hey, instead of framing this house with wood, can you give me a price for CMU for block?
Mhm.
Like if I might do the exercise because I'm curious, but like asking my mason, be like, hey, I need this house, I want all the exterior walls CMU. He's gonna be like, what?
That's
I'm
what
like,
my
yeah,
dad, when he built his
Yeah.
house, down in Belize, like, 2 years ago, they still build that way, like, his entire house is
yeah,
CMU, the whole thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Even in Florida, you see
Yeah.
it.
Florida. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then they stuck
Yeah.
all right on it.
Yep. I worked on a number of those down. I used to spend my winters down there. I got a lot of family down there, so either working on their houses or their neighbors' houses. Yeah.
So in an area like that, is CMU going to be less expensive than wood frame because it's more common?
I think it ends up being on. It's a little bit more that, but they're mainly doing the masonry on the first floor because of
Yeah.
durability with
Hmm.
both moisture and termites.
Got it.
And then they'll build the second floor wood frame,
Got it.
which is makes for a really weird transition when things start to shrink, where you've got
Yeah.
the wood frame above with the second floor, and you got the masonry below with uh, the cast beams, the concrete cast beams, and then you've got a weep screed there, and if they don't do it quite right, you get some weird cracking.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's
in the stucco.
Vincent Appel, who designed our 45 White Oak spec project. Him and I have been chatting a lot about the concrete and doing an all concrete house,
Yeah.
and the biggest conversation has been around, by having one trade, could you effectively make it cost effective? Like, could you make it cost effective where it's like now you're not bringing in multiple trades, you're bringing in one trade, that is managing, obviously reinforcing steel like rebar and whatnot, and then concrete.
You have a lot of forethought that goes into that on,
Of
like,
course, yeah,
on the from the finish end of things versus even a CMU house, where it's like, where do we actually want everything in this house to get this inside the concrete
yeah.
beforehand?
I,
Well, I
I
built.
mean, our thought too on that particular like design that we were making up in our head was that the concrete would also be exposed on the inside. So
Right.
you're like now you're eliminating plaster, you're eliminating, cavity insulation, you're eliminating, framing, siding, flooring, like a true all concrete house, which sounds brutalist, which is exactly what we were going for.
So you could use like aerated autoclave concrete block.
Hmm.
So you get some insulation value out of it. You
Yeah,
cut them with like a handsaw, and masonry skills are what would be needed to install them. And then if you ever need to remodel, you can actually carve into it. Like I'm thinking, if you needed to run a wire
Yeah.
somewhere, you could just drill through it and get into it, rather than the CMU where unless you grout all the cores, you're well. Anyway, there's lots of you could go ICFs, but then you got to put finishes on them because
yeah.
now they're not going to be the exposed.
I think the ICF is cool. A buddy of mine built an ICF house all the way up to. Did he do it up to the peak? I think he did up to his soffit, and I think then he trussed the roof, if
Yeah,
I remember right. But speaking of electrical, I'm gonna just share it, and whether or not I don't know if it was his trade secret or not, but I remember walking the home, and he was about to rough the electrical, and I'm like, "What do you do for all the electrical? Like, where do you put the wire?" He's like, "Oh, you put it right in the foam."
yeah,
And he's like, we basically carve a channel,
yeah.
and I'm like, "Oh man, that's a lot of work. Like, how are you carving that with a router?" And he grabbed the skill saw and he flipped it upside down and he took each tooth and he bent it in one bent left, one bent right, one bent left, one bent right. And when
Yeah.
that thing spun, I mean, it sounded like, an airplane. But he's like, yeah, you just blast it with the skill saw and it carves out a trough. I'm like, dude, I
It's like
love
a
that.
homemade dado blade.
Yeah, yeah, it's like exactly. It's like, well,
Yeah.
you would never use a date like, a dado blade would be completely overkill for foam. Um, but yeah, I mean, Brad, I mean, AFT, he did a ICF house, and I remember him telling me a story. He's like, I wanna say I think it was right before they were placing concrete that a client decided to move a window, and he's like, "I mean, that's not let me move it and we'll get right back to work." It was, I think it was 3 months of delay. I
Wow.
forget the whole story, but I remember it being, like, down to the wire, and it, like, threw the entire schedule off. I don't know if it
Wow.
was because they needed to order I'm not sure. But to your point, Tyler, it's like you gotta know.
Yeah.
You gotta plan that stuff out, and I know we've had the conversation before where it's like, "Yeah, but building a house is kinda cool," where it's like you get the opportunity, like, you can't think everything out, you gotta experience it on site. But I continue to believe that you can plan all that, and especially with rendering technology today, we're the home we're building as a spec, that thing's fully rendered with the actual site conditions. So I'll be able to look out a window in the rendering and be like, "That's what I'm going to see. I'm
Nice.
going to see the neighbor's, back porch." Um,
Speaking of spec builds, Mike, I didn't realize that you and Rick Arnold had a spec company for a minute. Is that true?
We had a custom building business, and we had I think 3 or 4 different businesses doing different things. We had Lifestyle Homes, which was a spec home building company, which was a partnership with Rick's mother, who was a real estate broker, and me and Rick. Mostly the two of them, and then I was kind of like an add-on partner after they'd already started it. Um, and then, yeah, Rick and I had the custom building business, custom home building, and then we had framing and finish crews that we ran.
And
So we had a bunch of different stuff
and
going.
then you essentially closed up shop because you didn't feel as though you guys that was the business that you wanted to be in, like running a business with multiple employees and everything else.
It things just evolved, and Rick bought a concrete forms company and said and figured he was just looking at the numbers for the amount of work we were doing different things, how much money we make on a spec home, how much on a custom home, saying, I think I can make more money, work less hours and less headaches, and I'll run a forms company. You're the second in and out on a project after the excavator. So you're going to get your money
Yeah.
kind of thing early in the project. And yeah, he made a go of that for years and was real successful. And we were still running our stuff together. And then that was at the same time when training, like we both got very involved with training, which was JLC Live, along with working for manufacturers, along with all that sort of stuff.
What year are we talking about here? Or like roughly?
That that would have been like 98, 99,
Okay.
2000. So just a couple years ago.
And
what
go ahead, Nick.
No, I was gonna say, what is the main benefit of doing that training? Like, what was your main reasoning for doing it?
Uh, it was fun. It was different. It was engaging.
Mm,
Financially, it
fine.
was it was
Yeah,
fine. Yeah. But it was just exciting. I mean, it was, traveling all over the place, meeting other builders around the planet,
yeah.
not mostly in the US and Canada, but meeting other builders, learning all kinds of stuff that we never would have learned otherwise. It made us better at what we did
Mm.
too, in the work side.
Yeah, I guess that's similar to what we're doing here,
Yeah.
on the podcast, where it's like, at the end of the day, it's not a hugely profitable thing, but it's
Mhm.
afforded us the opportunity to have people on the podcast and talk and be, part of the industry, and not only influence the industry but help promote the industry. And truthfully, I think Tyler and myself are both better at what we do because of it, where it's
And
like,
don't you find that the people, that your listeners, almost drive you to be better.
Oh, for sure. I
They
mean,
put they because you got to stay ahead of everybody,
yeah.
in a way, or learn from them. I mean, it's kind of like a two-way thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the whole collaboration mindset where, if you're constantly innovating and sharing, you create that coattail effect. If you
Hmm.
share, but you never innovate, someone's gonna, meet you at your doorstep and leave you behind. Where it's like, if you want to be continuing to be the thought leader, as we call it, right? You have to stay in the front. You have to continue to look at, like, where can I improve now? If I'm going to give you everything, how I do everything, well, I need to look at the next thing that I can improve on. So I remain in front. And yeah, I mean, I think that from the listenership, it's, that's what's always fueled us, where I think, like, there's no doubt that we've had conversations where it's like, man, this is just a grind. Like, what do we like? Should we wrap this up? Is this really worth it? And then we get like a message and where it's like, guys, you saved me. I was like at rock bottom, and I was listening to your podcast and realized that if I did this and did that, I could be successful. And we're like, shit.
Yeah.
All
Yep. You
right.
got to keep doing it. You got to keep doing it. Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing how what and that's the one thing you hear, and there are probably hundreds or thousands even that you don't get that feedback from
Yeah.
where
Right.
we're impactful.
Yeah.
And you got to realize that those people are out there, that they are benefiting.
So I always found growing up, at least when I started my business, I would excuse me, read a lot of your articles and find stuff that you did online, and I found it to be very insightful, um, inspired a lot of confidence in what I was doing, and just super valuable to me. And I understand that if it were articles, publications, online videos, whatever it were, that like it's not the most lucrative way to spend your time, right? But you made time and you set time aside for it. But I feel as though it were so valuable to me that if our industry were to put more money into that training, or pay people like you more money, whether it be through sponsors, vendors, that our industry as a whole would be better. Do you think that if there were more money in it, that you felt as though you could pull away from your day to day to spend more time teaching, that you would have taken that path even more heavily?
Um, Boy, it's hard to do a counterfactual and think what I would have done
Yeah.
if that would have been the case. I'm happy with the way a lot of things went. Yeah. So I kind of like the balance between, you know, I could have spent all my time just being a talking head on a video or writing articles, but the credibility you get from being somebody who has one hand in the field and another hand, out there sharing the practices that you're doing, or showing people different ways of doing things. I think you need to have the real you got to be credible, and that credibility comes from being somebody who's working in the field. I know a few people who have stepped out of that, and I think they kind of lose touch with what it's like to actually put on a tool belt or run a small construction business.
So what do you think, in your opinion, would be the best way to maximize someone's outreach or expand a lot of that education, as to like what you've done over the years? Because you're only one person, right? And we're only going to be able to reach as many people as we can. But I think that a lot of people have tried over the years to try and sort out what we need to as far as education goes. And I really personally always enjoyed what you did, what you put in the magazines and the articles, and like how do we afford people to be able to do that on a larger scale, to be able to help more people?
Do you think we need a larger scale? And when I go search for stuff on the internet, for if I'm researching for an article that I'm going to write, I have some ideas, but I want to see what other people have done. I find loads of videos, loads of other things that have been written on contractors' websites that they've written little things about how they do what they do and or post videos or on Instagram or TikTok or somewhere else. There's so much uh, there's so much stuff out there. I know I'm not
No,
really answering the
I
question in
understand what
a
you
way,
mean. I think that
but I don't know as I need to or any one person would need to do more. I think having that variety of lots of different sources is it expands your. If I'm going to do more of my talking about what I do, it's going to have my narrow blinders on it. Whereas there's so many other people with different ways of doing things and thinking about it. It's almost like crowdsourcing a bigger pool of knowledge.
yeah, it's almost as if we need to be able to catalog it in a more organized way.
I think that's the key. Yeah.
Because
You
right
know,
now it's like, I mean, even leading up to this conversation, where I was like, I want to look up the article, and I didn't find it. I didn't spend a ton of time because it was just a waste of my time. But like, I recall an article that you wrote about um, building a set of stairs and like how you formed up the landing for it, and how you constructed the landing and laid out the landing. And I was like, I remember that being just such a huge article for me to be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I can do this." And I went to look that up and I couldn't find it. And like, I'm sure I
mm,
could dig further and find it again, but to be able to catalog and inventory all of this information in a more organized manner seems as though it would be extremely valuable to everyone.
yeah, I know at the Fine Home Building website, it was a beast to try to find any old
Yeah.
article. Even though I wrote the darn thing, I couldn't find it. And then they came up with their project guide. So they kind of tried to aggregate things and they got like a deck guide and they got a drywall guide and they got a framing guide. But this morning I was looking at the framing guide because I got to do a webinar for them with along with Aaron uh, Jones and Ben Bogey on framing with tips for framing with engineered lumber. So I wanted to look back at some of the old articles that I did and John Spear and others, and they weren't all in that framing, floor framing, roof framing. So it's like even their stuff falls short. And then JLC's the same way, and then go on to any of the other, professional remodeler or Builder magazine or some of the other ones that are more maybe business related. And it's hard to find those old articles that you remember and you go, man, that was a good article. I got to find it again. Yeah. So there's a good project for you. If you got some spare
Yeah, that's what I
time
was gonna do. I
is
was gonna start
go
tonight.
and aggregate everything and build a website. Remember the old websites back when you needed to find anything on the internet before Google and search engines? You had to go through portals, which were basically little bibliographies of some information that
Ah,
somebody
I
took the time
yeah.
to actually aggregate and have all these little links to so that you could get to what you were searching for. They were, yeah, this was pre, yeah, this was, 90s stuff.
I feel like this was
Yeah.
pre-me. I don't recall this
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But,
They were called
in
web
all
portals.
fairness, my
But
family was like, "We're not getting internet because you can get it free at school." So I don't think I got the internet in my house until I was maybe like a sophomore in high school, and it was dial up at that point, and we had one phone line.
yeah,
So it was
yeah,
limited
take up.
internet use, until I was, like, well into high school. So Mike, you
With that in mind, think about from a builder remodeler perspective, we are in an amazing age of where we can access information. Because you think back then, 30 years ago, you had to go back to your old stack of magazines and thumb through to find something. But now you can just do a quick search.
y
I remember, do you know who Craig Savage is by
do
chance?
not.
I
No.
wait,
I'll look him
I
up.
know that
I'll look
name.
him
He's
up.
he's he'd be somebody if you want like a whirlwind of old time like how the building industry has changed. He'd be a good interview, but he used to be involved with JLC. He's pretty much the one who one of the people who kickstarted JLC Live to include more of what you see of the live demonstrations on the show floor and get information out there. But he had an old BlackBerry years ago when they first had the little tiny screen
Yeah.
on them, and he said, "Watch this." And it was mind blowing. He brought up a video of a guy, friend of mine, Carl Hagstrom, doing a window flashing installation. And he's like, "This is the way we're all going to learn how to do stuff on the job site." He said, "Imagine being at the job site. You take your phone out, you click a few buttons, and now you can watch a video from somebody who knows what they're doing so that you can
Mm,
install it properly." But this was, 18, 19 years ago when he said this,
mm.
and I said, "Huh, interesting." There was no even 4G LTE at the time, and now we got 5G, and this was all, anyway. He was thinking way ahead, but now we have it. And I think it's a golden age for this stuff.
It is.
And
Yeah, it's
hopefully
fun.
it keeps going.
It's funny. I know I have it somewhere, but I have this book. It's like how to install crown molding. It's a baby blue book. You know
Yep.
what book I'm talking about, right?
I've
And
heard, I think
yeah,
so.
and
Yes.
it was like super popular. I learned about it on the Contractor Talk forum.
Hmm.
They're like,
Yep.
if you have complicated crown, buy this book.
Yeah.
And I remember I had crown that was raking up like a roof line that then would flatten out, and it walked you through. And it's like if we had that situation now, my guys would just YouTube it.
Yep.
I would YouTube it. I wouldn't even think
Yep.
about, hey, where's that book?
Right. Yeah.
I still
And
use my magazine and book pile.
I don't. I flip through the magazine for inspiration, and if there's nothing inspiring through that first flip, it's in the trash.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
You
like
know?
I like the legitimacy of, like, you can dig around the internet and you can find different ways that people do things, and
Yeah,
suggestions, but I do like the accountability and legitimacy of finding something that's put out by a reputable source that has the
that's fair.
accountability of tons of people trolling the shit out of them, where it's like, if they
Yeah.
did something wrong, it's going to be fixed, and they are doing their due diligence to ensure that you are doing things right. And I do find it difficult to find what I'm looking for on websites like JLC and Fine Home Building. No discredit to them, it's probably me and not them, but I just, like, sometimes I
Oh,
search stuff on the internet and I'm like, I saw that once and I have no idea how to get back there.
hmm
But I know that it's like, if I have a book in here, that I know probably exactly where that is in the book that I read it. But that might just be me.
So you made a question I could kind of summarize earlier about how do we take the next step in educating contractors in a way would be this is a pinch point we're talking about, which is finding good curated or well edited information that you can
Yep.
trust and then be something you can implement. So ideally it's going to be short bullet point photographs or better yet videos, and it comes down to somebody searching through all the stuff that's already out there and saying, here's the, you know, if you want to know how to do crown molding, these are the 5 best videos, and they'll probably land on something from Gary Katz, something from Craig Savage, something from, Gary Striegler or somebody else, a couple other carpenters out there. And then you watch those couple of videos and you could tackle something you never tried
Yeah,
before.
it's true. So I also what I had not realized that you initially you were going to become a teacher. Like, you were in getting your master's in education. Is that correct?
Where'd you
I
learn
was
that?
I was internet. You can find anything on the internet.
Wow. The scary thing is I don't when you sign up for a web like you like a YouTube uh, account thing or a Facebook account, they want your birthday and all this other stuff. I always put there's about 30 different birthdays out there for me because, well, think about all the information that you end up putting out there that it can now be like like mopped up by somebody, and then you get some ID theft.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Well,
that's
listen,
sort of
you're
a
safe.
side
I'm
part
not
of
gonna I'm
that.
not
But
gonna steal your identity.
You must get so many birthday emails, like, all through the
I
year.
do. my
Like
my LinkedIn profile has one thing, my
like,
Facebook has another,
"Happy
Instagram has
birthday." It's like, "It's
another.
not my birthday to." "Oh, yes, it is my birthday
Yeah, that's
today."
right. Yeah, it is
so
funny.
did
Every month they have a
did
birthday, and then you get all those freebies from
yeah,
like the pizza shop down the
that's the
road.
Yeah.
best part.
"Come in for your free
All
slice."
throughout the year.
Yep, exactly.
S
Oh, but yeah, I was, yeah, I took a long time to get through college. Rick Arnold, who I used to work for before we became business partners, he was pretty good about letting me drop in and drop out of being working for him
Mm.
while I was taking my forays into different aspects of
as you were
college, whether it
dropping in and
was
dropping out of college.
college. Yeah, it
Did you
took
know what
a
you
long
wanted to
time.
teach?
I wanted to teach science.
Nice.
Yep, I did know that, and that was I have a degree. My undergraduate degree is in biology, so when I think back, it kind of worked out because when I was in my master's program, I didn't do undergraduate for education. That was part of the master's program. So I was doing student teaching. I was kind of older than most of the other students who were the undergraduate group. So when I did my student teaching, I said, I wish somebody would have told me this is a real pain in the butt teaching kids.
Yeah.
They can be real jerks, when they test out the new teacher. So I said, yeah, no. And then when they offered me a job, and I said, okay, great. What does it pay? And they said 18.5. And I'm like, wait a minute, I earned that working 8 weeks, 10 weeks last summer framing houses.
Mm.
So I said, I think I'm going to jump in with both feet into construction.
Yeah.
And then circling back, and then, writing kind of turned into teaching. So I get to teach. So I get to do what I like, both things, two things that I like.
Yeah, it worked out. It's funny, I was actually a
Yeah.
bio major initially when I first went to school, and, like, halfway through undergrad, I was like, "What am I like, I don't wanna teach, and I don't wanna be a scientist, so, like, what am I doing as a bio major?" But in high school, I was like, that was the only subject, science, in like growing up in school that did not completely bore me out of my gourd. So I was like, you have to go to
Mm.
college. What are you going to pick? I was like, I guess something science related because it was the only thing that was somewhat tolerable to me. And then you get into college and it's like, oh, a degree in science is actually mostly math, like chemistry and physics, and I was like, yeah, this isn't what I wanted to do. And I don't want to be a scientist and I don't want to be a teacher, so I'm also dropping out. Um, that's interesting that,
Sounds
that
like
you were a bio major.
sounds
Yeah.
familiar. Sounds familiar.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that you are able to fulfill that passion to a certain extent, and
Yeah.
obviously that has to be something that's important to you, being that you've continued doing that over the years. It is,
And most of the teaching I do, you guys don't even see because it's all done through my local builders association.
Mm.
They in Rhode Island Builders Association, because there's been such an underinvestment in the construction trades, and because of the demand for skilled workers in the trades, they got a grant from the department, the I don't know if it's Department of, it was some employment division of the state. So they got like money to offer free education to contractors. So and all you got to do is like fill in the form on a website, and you get free as much as you want education, both on business side of being a contractor as well as the how-to side. So I teach at least 7 to 10 hours a month of CEU worthy classes just for contractors in Rhode Island. They have every day they have at least 2 hours to 5 hours of free
Is that
training
is during the
available
day?
every
Is it
day.
evenings as well or just during the day?
They do them mostly during the day, mostly over Zoom, some in person, but all of the ones that are done over Zoom are
Yeah.
recorded. So if a contractor wasn't able to be there for the 8 in the morning till 10:30 in the morning, they can review or watch that video for a 7-day period after it
I
was
needed
done.
that in
So
college. That'd have been
yeah.
nice. I'm not
Yeah, it
gonna
would
be
have
there
been.
again tomorrow.
Yeah,
What are you
yeah.
teaching?
I got I've got a stable of probably 40 to 50 hours of courses.
Wow.
There's 17 and a half hours just on deck construction,
So it's actually
and they're
it's
all
all
in different
hands-on,
modules.
you're teaching people, like, how to actually do the work, or is it also business
It,
related?
it's none of mine are business related. That was one of my major failings as a contractor was I'm not a good business person. I learned a lot, but yeah. Um, Mostly it's done on the Zoom classes, and it'd be like how to size footings, how to size the deck joists, how to attach guardrail systems or guardrail post to frame connection. A lot of it's code
Yeah,
related, but then you can extrapolate that to actually practices with. And I don't do the typical PowerPoint slides where it's just a bunch of words. It's like slides of jobs and form
Mm.
or like calculations and things like that. And then I do a whole 2.5 hours just on water resistant barriers. So it's kind of funny we started out there because I can start rattling off the ASTM standard for this product or the AC, the acceptance criteria for the codes for different types of house wrap, whether they're a blah, 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 blah. But anyway, kind of do a whole deep dive on all that stuff. And then it gets into performance, air leakage testing, and then how to air seal a house the easy way. How to not shortcut, but how not to waste a whole lot of time. Thoughtful air sealing while the house is being framed. So,
Mm.
and then
do
on
you
from
own
there.
all of this content? That's
Yeah,
cool. And so
yeah.
it's your
Own it in the sense that you own just about anything you
yeah, but I mean, they're not hiring you to
publish,
produce
produce.
these and then saying, like, "This is for our curriculum, this is not yours." Like, you could do what you
Right.
wanted
The
with them.
the only thing that I got sort of got to be careful what I say because somebody might listen to this, but that associated with the Build Associate. But the only thing that I did um, put together that I didn't end up owning that they kind of co-own is there's a 5 hour class that anybody who wants to be a contractor in Rhode Island has to take. So I developed that class, and then when I teach it my
Yeah.
way. But there are some other teachers who since
So they hired
sort
you
of
to
taken.
produce that for them.
Well, I was on the volunteer committee that was putting the whole. We were drafting the state regulations for the at that time for education for contractors in Rhode Island. So I think Nick, you have a Rhode Island registration,
Mhm.
or you still maintain that in addition to your mass licenses.
Um, I haven't renewed it. I don't
Okay.
know. It's funny, someone I just saw it, in a folder recently. I think I have it pulled up on my phone. Yeah, Rhode Island.
Contractor registration, yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering when it because we never,
Because you did one house over in like East Providence or somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah,
so it is expired.
yeah. The
Good to
So
know.
if
Good to
if
know.
you ever want to come back to work in Rhode Island again, you're going to have to take that same boring 5 hour class
Mm,
again
yep,
because it expired.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
Sorry about
are
that.
most of your like the teaching that you're doing with this, it's somewhat off the cuff as far as you have your presentation and then you're just recording yourself teaching these, or what's the setup for that? Is it essentially like an online college course?
Well, they're offered like through the Builders Association. They have a website where they have all their education for each month, and so teach 1 or 2 or 3 classes each month, and so it's on their
Yeah.
schedule, and they're done over Zoom. Yeah, they send out the link to anybody who's registered for the class, and then they come on in. So because of what I'm teaching, and they're not business related, and they're things that people are actually
Yeah.
interested in, like deck construction, or you know how to you know what's another one is stormproof a roof, or you know uh, roofing in high wind zones, things like that that contractors would be interested in. I get some of the better registration numbers. So we'll see between 15 and 30 people register for a class that
And
I'll
this
do,
is only for
which is
people who
pretty cool.
have their are registered as builders in Rhode Island, like somebody outside of the state can't take these courses?
They can. Anybody could take them, but it's really marketed towards Rhode Island contractors who participate in what's called the Rhode Island Department of Labor grant program, and so they would register with the state, and then they um, would all they do is they fill out a form to say they would like to participate in taking
Yeah.
classes, and then the Builders Association, sends them out the monthly the list, and then they take classes.
Would it be if somebody were to take this, do you pay like per class or are you paying for a yearly registration or how's it work?
I don't know how the Rhode Island Builders Association charges for folks that are not participating in the grant program. I know for our 1,000 or 1,200 members of the Builders Association, it's all the education is free, just as part
Yeah.
of our being a member.
That's interesting. I
It
wonder if
and NAHB has been looking at what Rhode Island's doing, and other states, other local HBAs, as trying to develop some
yeah.
linkages around the country, which would be nice if they could put something
Yeah, I'd be
together
curious if
where
other states or jurisdictions are doing it. And like I'm sure that even though it's marketed and tailored towards Rhode Island and Rhode Island building code and everything else, I'm sure that there's a lot of crossover to
yeah,
other areas of the country. That's neat.
especially on the business related classes, they have probably at least 2/3 of the classes are business related, and all of those are evergreen kind of
Yeah,
things, and they be evergreen, like whether you're in Rhode Island or in Oregon. If you want to learn how to use QuickBooks
Hmm.
or something like that, they have the basic, the intermediate, the advanced, and it's going to be kind of the
that's
same.
cool. Um,
It
so
is.
you've done a good job of diversifying your income as a contractor, right? You have a contracting business, which you just admitted that was one of your struggles was being a profitable, successful contractor, which I think is easy to understand when you're passionate about the work that you're doing. But obviously, you've written, you've taught, you're still teaching and still writing. Are there other opportunities for somebody who's in a position that we are in to diversify their income in the construction industry that you can think of?
Other ways to diversify. Well, I mean, so teaching classes, I mean, I can, if on a dollar per hour basis, I mean, I can make $100+ an
Yeah,
hour. I mean, if you're looking at it from that perspective,
Yeah.
and you're a skilled person who works for somebody else by the hour, or you know, as a metric. And you could probably earn a lot more than that if you work for manufacturers,
Hmm.
doing
yep.
trainings for manufacturers. So there's some opportunities in doing teaching training. Um, the What I've always found and to be most lucrative for me is buying, keeping, renting houses, single family. You just sometimes opportunities come up to buy properties that don't hit the market through a real estate agent, and if you can buy something, I've had really good luck. Keep it local, to where you are, get good tenants, and then over time those properties appreciate. I In the last year and a half have sold 4 or 5 properties, and I'll tell you that's a really nice nest egg since none of them had mortgages on them by the time I sold them.
Yeah.
And they were well kept, single family, detached in nice older homes, but in nice neighborhoods. And I fixed them up over the years. And because the skill set that we all have in construction, there's a lot of stuff you can do yourself that um, somebody who's buying a house to say just flip it, they're going to be spending money hiring a contractor where
Right.
little sweat equity can go into
So
it.
you're buying primarily single family homes to do that?
Yep, yep.
Um,
I know other people who do buy multifamily and do the same thing, and they're
Yeah.
good at
Why not
successfully.
multifamily?
Um, because so I'm a true Rhode Islander. Anything that's more than 15 minutes from my house,
Oh God.
I don't even look at the job. That's the
Except
first
except for
qualifier.
Arizona.
Well, that's where I'm moving to, but I
Yeah.
mean, that's where I have a house. But,
Yeah.
as far as jobs go, I mean, all of the properties I
Sure.
bought were within a 5-minute bike ride from my house.
Got
So
it. Makes sense.
it's just the way I did it.
Yeah.
It could be
Yeah. It's not
okay.
is
right
it
nor
is it
wrong. It's
do you find it more difficult to, like, from a numbers perspective, right? When you're looking at, obviously there's different costs associated with multifamily, but if you have a single house that you're paying for, and you have multiple tenants and incomes coming in, generally speaking, like, you still have the maintenance on the structure, and that's getting amortized through multiple rents. Was it harder to do you find it harder, and I guess maybe you don't have the experience with multifamily, but I would assume that it would be harder to make a profit on a single family home, or to recoup your investment on a single family home, than it would be with the multifamily. Do you think that your market was different? That it made it a little bit easier, or were you able to buy low, being that you were tapping into that market before, or tapping into those homes before they went to market? How did you make that work?
that you make your money when you buy the property. Really, I bought at when nobody else was buying. The Great Recession that hurt a lot of people. I fortunately had um, a good income. My wife had a good income, so we could qualify if we needed a mortgage, and I had
Yeah.
cash, so I could buy stuff then. Also, knowing the properties in the neighborhood and seeing like one property, it was you could tell something was going on with the family. All of a sudden, everybody's gone. The house is sitting vacant for a long time, and then you start hearing what's going on, and it's going for foreclosure, and then going to the foreclosure sale. And all the other guys going to the foreclosure, scratching their head. They don't know the history of the property. I did, so they thought something had. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, understanding how to purchase foreclosed
Yeah, and
properties,
that
and there's
it's interesting to hear, that you do make the money on the acquisition of a property, and a lot of people don't realize that. They're looking at what they're going to be able to sell it for, when realistically,
mm,
like, what you're going to be selling it for is market dependent. And
yeah,
that can fluctuate, but if you buy it for 50 grand less than asking, like, you can make your money up front, and not have to depend on a market turnaround, or if a market does collapse, you're not really behind the eight ball at that point. That's it is interesting though, because I know a lot of people, multifamilies is what they want to be doing, and they don't look at single family homes. But I guess it also depends on where you are, what the housing market looks like, and how much
yep.
sweat equity you can put into those. Because generally, a multifamily is going to be bigger and require more labor to do that. And if it's a single family that's in decent shape and it's just maintenance on your end, it's not as big of an investment.
Mm. And another leg of the stool for my financial success was spec home building. Not that I did a ton of them, but
mm,
I I could have probably made more money if I had done like a lot of spec builders and just do like marginal. I always went overkill. I mean, my houses were like near passive house level of performance, and then we put on the nicest, best materials, and then go a little overboard. But in the community where I work, it works because it's a high end
Mhm.
bedroom community.
Yeah.
So,
Do you like having the accountability of owning and working where you live?
do I like the accountability? Um, I guess it forces me that I can't mess with
Yeah.
anybody. Because everybody knows who you are. You can't make any mistakes. You got to follow through on everything. You got to be a good, just a good neighbor and a good person when you're building stuff.
Yeah, I mean, especially you're a landlord in your own town or the surrounding neighborhoods, and it's like, well, Mike's a dirtbag landlord. It
Yeah.
gets around quickly.
No, the flip side of that is Mike's a really nice guy. You want to rent from him. So I'd have more people calling me up all the time. Hey, you got any rentals coming up? We hear you're a
Mm,
nice guy. Because most of my tenants would become not good friends, but you know, we got along real well.
Yeah.
And most of
that's
them hung
good.
around. Yeah, it works. I, yeah, we could go on a whole sidebar about that, but
Um,
Well, Mike, you got a hard stop, right? Here at 4:30?
I got like within the next five,
all
six
right, I have
minutes.
I
Yeah.
have one more question for you. It should be a simple one. I don't know if Nick has anything, but how old are you now, Mike?
Like I said before, multiple birthdays. I don't remember. Yeah, if you look on the internet, you'll probably find numbers that'll pop up anywhere from like 60 to like 80.
You got to be
I'm
six.
gonna
You got
look
to
it
be
up. How old
65.
is
I'm saying
Mike Guertin?
you got to be 65. My parents are like
Yeah.
65.
Well, I've been a card carrying member of the AARP for
It says
20
58.
years now.
That's it.
20 years.
Then it says 63.
I could be anywhere in there. I like to keep it a mystery.
So
You know what? How about I put it this way? I feel like I'm 42.
Hold on.
That's
This is the
one
best,
nice thing.
Mike, this is the best part. Public records for Mike Guertin range in the age from 41 to 78 years old.
See, I've done my job at making sure nobody can steal my identity
Seriously?
again. Yeah.
um
Oh,
So,
that's funny.
following that question, which we did not get an answer to, are you getting tired of all the manual labor?
no,
Cool.
Mm, cool. That's cool.
no, a good day is I'm outside working.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I-
Yeah. I can't sit
Yeah, I mean
still.
there's so many people, especially nowadays, that are looking to convince people to scale a business, or you can't work with the tool belt on forever. You're not going to be able to sustain this way. And there's people like you who have had the tool belt on their entire career and are still sustaining, and still growing to a certain extent. And it's good to see, and I think it reiterates that if you're doing things right and you're remaining healthy and you're working hard, and you're
Yeah.
keeping after yourself, that you can work in this industry. I mean, you're also doing like framing and roofing and siding. You're not inside like painting and doing, like, you're working hard, and you're making
Uh, I'm not working like though. I'm not doing some of the crazy stuff that I used to that nobody should do.
back when you were
Like
42.
carrying, we used to have contests on the framing job. How many studs can you get up to the second floor on your shoulder?
Mhm.
You know,
Did you
get
see
up to
that
like
video?
14, 18.
Did you
It's
see that
nuts.
video
It's just,
recently of that kid walking up the roof with
Yeah.
like he had like 4 bundles of shingles on his shoulder? Not but Mike, not only that, like
He was
I'm watching
small.
him. He was small dude, and I'm like, that's a lot of weight. And he got
yeah,
up close to the top of the roof and he went right through the sheathing.
He was on the hip. He
I
was
didn't
on
see
like the
that.
Yeah, he
hip
was on the hip.
rafter, and he was walking on either side of the hip, and then he went to the one side of the hip, and it must have been like,
I don't care what he fell on, that shit broke
That
oh
hurt.
bones.
yeah.
Oh,
And he just stepped on like a
that's,
hollow spot, I guess between maybe two jack rafters that was wide enough for
yeah,
him to
yep.
go through. And like as soon
Wow.
as he stepped on it, just disappeared.
Yeah,
We laugh at things when you see it like that, but anybody in the trades know that oh,
it
you
hurt.
you don't recover from a
No,
bad injury like that if
no.
it was a bad
I wouldn't
fall.
recover from carrying 4 bundles of shingles like that, even if it went well.
Yeah.
I would be hurting the next day, let alone if then you go through a roof. Hopefully, there was a
Yeah.
very well-built attic floor below him, and that's where he stopped.
It's still 4 bundles of shingles
Yeah, but
laying on
if
top
you
of you.
went through past attic floor, down a couple
You just
more,
kept going.
it'd be a lot worse.
Yeah.
So obviously he wasn't straddling one of those hip
No.
I
jacks
mean,
because
it also
otherwise it
looked
could have
like
been a
it was probably 7/16 OSB
Yeah.
sheathing, like, it
yes.
was
Yep.
just
So
it was no
so
good.
what's your record for
Yeah.
bundles of shingles or studs?
No, I mean, I used to be able one of my first jobs working for Rick Arnold back in like 81 or so was carrying shingles up to the roof.
Mm,
Think about all the equipment we have available today, like telehandlers. Those just weren't things, or cranes, or even ladder lifts. Those weren't stuff you had.
no.
Nobody had that. So anyway, I got 450 an hour to climb up and down the ladder carrying bundles. But no more than, I mean, we sometimes do
Yeah.
two, but that was back at 3-tab shingle days when a bundle was half the weight of a
Oh my god.
current bundle
Architectural.
of
Yeah.
shingles. Yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
Mike,
Yeah.
we appreciate your time. I ap-
Yeah, good getting together with you guys again. We see each other in brief moments
In
at a trade
yeah,
passing,
show
yeah,
or
exactly.
somewhere or a lumber yard, and we just like, hey, catch up for like 30 seconds, and then
you're always in the middle
yeah.
of doing something or talking to somebody, and it's crazy. But yeah, I appreciate.
Or you guys
Yeah,
are
I
as well.
appreciate everything that you have done, are doing. All the teaching, all the article, all the knowledge was always valuable to me. So I appreciate it. I want to thank you personally for that.
And I got to thank you, both of you guys, because I learned from you guys listening to the podcast, and with Tyler, with your articles that I pick up in home building. I mean, I'm almost tempted to maybe do some from one article on some wallpaper stuff where you're wrapping around the cover plates and things like that to match the
You got
patterns.
it.
It's
You
like
could do it. If
I
anyone
can
can
do
do it,
that.
you can do
I
it.
can
Just
do
wash
that.
your
Yeah.
hands first.
But yeah, no, we're all doing stuff that helps the industry, and it's nice to see guys like you who are coming up behind what me and a bunch of the old guys doing similar things are doing. Out there speaking in person, as well as the podcast you're doing, because there are a lot of people that you don't hear from that are benefiting from it.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, so keep doing it, even when the days get like grinding.
All
I
right.
appreciate it, Mike.
Mike,
Take
appreciate you,
care.
Happy
man.
birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday. Just email you every day. Mike, all you got to do is there's a button on the bottom that says leave studio. When you hit that button, it's going to let you know that you are uploading your file. Just let that go to
Okay.
100%, and then you can close your browser.
Okay.
Be well, man. Talk soon.
Bye now.
We haven't had him on since what, JLC, like
Long time ago. That was in the beginning.
2018.
That was in the beginning.
That's crazy. Did you ever tour his spec house
Mm-mm.
or the fine home building house he
No.
built? I don't know why I went there. I
Where was
remember
it?
getting
Rhode
on a
Island?
bus. Yeah, I remember going to a church, getting on a bus, and going to his house, and he gave us a tour. And I went back to the church, and then we left.
Really? Were you
Yeah,
like?
and I
Was it when
don't.
you were younger or
No, no,
recently?
no, no. It was. I mean, I very much knew him. Um, and I don't know why. It must have been some sort of like. It was maybe it was a builders group or an HB. I don't know.
I don't know. It was not. I
Um,
was not there.
or maybe it was maybe fine home building.
Could have been.
Maybe it was in those days. Yeah, but yeah, that dude. It's funny. If you Google Mike Guertin age Rhode Island, it literally gives you a span as to what public records show.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. Someone's gonna get his license.
Oh yeah.
We should.
Dude, I saw this video online yesterday. um and it was this guy, I forget his name, but basically he goes on and people send him pictures and then he figures out where it is based on a picture or like a video. And
Oh, dude, there's lot. Are you talking about Jose Monkey?
yeah, he just came
Yes.
up in my feed last night and this lady was like, "I want to show my 11-year-old daughter how dangerous it is
Yes.
to take selfie videos of herself." And
Yeah.
she's like, "Here's a video of me." And then like I
Yep.
didn't watch the whole thing, but he basically took the video and based on like
Dude.
shadows and what was in the
Yeah.
background and the way that the light was hitting at certain times, was like, this is what it's going to look like on a map. And then
Dude, it's I've watched multiple of
really?
those videos. They're crazy, and now I saw one the other day, a girl who also plays this, like she just plays into super creepy. Like, she gets close to the camera and just it's like
Yeah.
TikTok shit, right? And one guy commented, was like, "You can't find me, all my personal stuff is hidden, like, I don't share anything." And she literally found him.
It's nuts.
And she was like, "Is this your house?" And he's like, "No, you're wrong." She goes, I'm not wrong. I'm looking at the public record and your name is on it." And he's like, "What the like, it's yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, I don't think that there's anything that I would be doing that I would care, like, if I posted
No.
something and somebody found where I was that quickly. But it
The
was
bet
crazy that, like, it was that easy for people to do.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, based on the license plate the license plate, you're probably in this
Yeah.
state, and based on the fact that there's a Texaco gas station, you're probably in this." Yeah, the it just made me think. I had a realtor DM me one day. He was like, "Hey, I have a property that your client might be interested in." I'm like, "Oh, awesome! Can you send me the address?" He's like, "No, I can't share the address, but here's a picture of the house." So I got the picture of the house. I'm like, "Okay, cool," and it had a unique roof
Yeah.
line, and I went on Google Earth and I was like, "Oh, it's, 1,000 Main Street." He goes, How do you know that?" I'm like, "I looked on Google
Yeah,
Earth."
it's not that
And he
hard.
goes, "Shit." He's like, "It's not my listing, but, like, can you, like, keep me in the loop?" I'm like, "Bro, you're just all you're doing is just
Yeah,
gatekeeping at this point, like, trying to make a
that's
buck."
amazing, though.
But yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy to see. But yeah, Mike, nobody knows how old he is, but it's always
No
his
one knows.
birthday.
It's
So
always
everyone
his
go out there and
birthday.
wish Mike a happy birthday.
We should add oh, he probably was on the list for T-shirts. Guys, T-shirts are gone.
Oh,
We sold well over 100 T-shirts. So if you missed out, um, sorry. Maybe we'll do another run, or maybe we'll come up with another design. If you caught the sneak peek last week, we also have these awesome pencils, Modern Craftsman pencils that are being manufactured in the USA, box and everything. Those will be up on the store soon. And like I said, t-shirts are gone, but we'll come up with another run and we'll do a pre-sale for those uh, based on interest. So if you're interested, drop us a DM on Instagram. Make sure you leave a review on iTunes. And we'll see you
yeah,
next
and
week.
thanks to everyone who ordered. We appreciate it. Appreciate the love, the support, and can't wait to see you in your t-shirts.
Oh yeah, if you did order a t-shirt, got a t-shirt, make sure you post it on social media so we can share it and people get FOMO.
Sweet.
There we go.